Whew, boy, it's a hot one today. Another 104-degree day. So it's just been brutally hot around here. I've had to do double duty on my rabbits, keeping them cool by switching out the ice and stuff like that, and spraying water on the ground for the chickens. So it's been brutally hot. But as I'm out here walking around in the woods and just sitting down for a break here, I started thinking about how one of my most often asked questions is not only where am I from, but where would I recommend people go for like a strategic relocation? You know, let's say you're living in one of these blue cities and you're conservative at heart and you just can't stand what you're seeing all around you, and maybe you're libertarian or whatever, but you can't stand seeing what's going on all around you, and there's skyrocketing crime and all this other stuff, the police force being, basically defunded in many cases. And so as our societies are breaking apart further and further, I think there's going to eventually be not a peaceful divorce, but like a peaceful separation. And people are going to voluntarily go to the places that are more in line with their values, right? Their fundamentals and their values. So I wanted to read you guys a few states that I think would be, if I were moving today, these states would all be high on my radar. And I'm not telling you to move to any one of these states. You're going to have to go and do your own research and figure out how much is land, what kind of job availability is there, in the line of work that you do, and those sorts of things. But I think this may help some of you out that just have no way of knowing what the best place, where to strategically relocate in 2022. So as of Friday, there was this poll that came out, and I saw it on Breitbart News. You can go check it out yourself. 28 states have the president with an approval rating below 30%. So that would be a great place to start. According to that polling, and you might want to look at other polls as well, but according to that polling, these 28 states had Biden at an approval rating below 28 or below 30%. So we're going to look at these top 8 states that had Biden at the lowest approval rating. And so the lower the number, the more conservative, libertarian, old school American they're going to be, at least in my opinion. So Arkansas had a 20% approval rating. So only 20% of the people in Arkansas. And you got to remember, Arkansas has a lot of farmland and stuff like that. So if you're looking for a mountainous region out in the Ozarks and whatever that other mountain range is out there, there's a lot of mountains out in that area, probably a lot of places to start up a great homestead. So if I were moving today, Arkansas, parts of Arkansas, probably not around any of the big cities like Little Rock or anything like that, but find other smaller cities that you could live around, and find a place out in the woods somewhere. You could probably still get it relatively cheap, especially compared to a blue state. So next up here is Idaho, and for years and years people have been moving to Idaho. And in fact, I believe the guy's name was Joel Scalzon that did the original strategic relocation video, and he actually had a book about it and everything. And way back then, Idaho ranked almost at the top of the charts, if not the top of the charts, for places to go where you could still go out and make your own way and have woods and things like this, right? So Idaho, I'd really be heavily looking at Idaho, especially if you're already out on the western side of the United States. Now, one thing I'd be aware of is they're having some of the worst droughts we've ever seen out in the western United States right now. So that you're going to need to factor that in to wherever you decide. Next up here, Kentucky. And only 18% of the people in Kentucky approve of Biden and what he's doing to destroy America. So that's great news. I don't know a lot about Kentucky, but from what I do know, there's a lot of woods still around there, and you may have to go out and live out in the remote sections of Kentucky, but you should still be able to find a place for relatively cheap. I don't want to say cheap because nothing's cheap anymore, in Biden's economy. So next up is North Dakota. Only 17% approve of Biden in North Dakota, so that'd be another one. I believe that's where Governor Kristi Noem is the governor of that state. I'm not 100% sure. Correct me if I'm wrong down in the comments. But I, for the most part, like what she's all about. Seems to be a true conservative. So next up here, Oklahoma, and that was 19% approval, so that's pretty good. I only picked the ones that were 20% and under. If they were over 20%, they're still, that doesn't mean this is an exact perfect list to decide where you're going to live, but this will give you a good idea of what the politics are going to be like in that area. So Oklahoma, 19% approval. Again, a state with a lot of I think of ranching and farmland and the Great Plains, and there are, I believe, some mountainous regions, probably the Ozarks probably kind of spill over into Oklahoma a little bit too. So if you're into mountains, you could probably live out there. Probably a place you could still get relatively good deals on land. Next up is Utah. 19% approved. Now, the one thing about Utah that gives me pause is that's where Mitt Romney's from. He's the senator of Utah. So, I don't know. And also, that's where Salt Lake City is, and they have a huge Mormon population. Now, I have nothing against Mormons, but it's just not that's not who I am, right? So, I don't know that I'd fit in with that kind of a culture. Now, I'm sure if you get away from that Salt Lake City area and you get out into some of the more mountainous, remote parts of Utah, and there's a lot of beautiful land out there. Some of the best motorcycle riding in the world and hiking and things like that could probably be done there. It may be a little tougher to be a farmer, though, in that kind of land. Probably be more likely to be a rancher or something like that. So Utah, I'd give it consideration, especially if I was out on the West Coast somewhere and I didn't want to move all the way across the country. I mean, I get it. Small steps, right? Next up is West Virginia. This one surprised me a little bit. I didn't realize they only have a 16% approval of Biden. I'd really be looking into that. West Virginia. There's probably still a lot of good remote, areas like this, wooded lands that you could buy, a place that you could, basically build up your own little survival retreat, your own homestead where you are as self-sufficient as you possibly can be. Last is Wyoming. And they were one of the best. They only had a 16% approval rating. So West Virginia and Wyoming were the ones that disapprove of Biden the most. And that says a lot, again. And now this is just one poll, so I would go and do a lot more research. But based on what I know about these different states, I would say that's a pretty good start for you. Arkansas, Idaho, Kentucky, North Dakota, Oklahoma, Utah, West Virginia, Wyoming. And surprisingly enough, Texas didn't make the list. Now, you got to remember, of course, Texas they're right on the front line of the entire border crisis that's going on right now. They have the largest border that borders Mexico. So that's where a lot of the people are coming up, and they're having a lot of problems down there. And, I don't know. It's up to you. You have to kind of decide also what kind of climate are you willing to put up with. If you're used to living in the high mountains and things like that, then, being down in flatlands is probably not going to suit your needs. You're going to be wanting to look towards places like Utah. And I believe Kentucky has some mountains as far as that goes. I've never been to Kentucky, but from what I've seen of it, it's a beautiful place. But there's lots of options out here, guys. And I think that's what we're going to be going through over the next probably decade or so. Whether people realize it or not, I think that's what's happening right now. There's a mass exodus of places that are super, basically liberal cesspools. I don't have a nice way to say it. You can look around at LA and California and all the other, San Francisco and all the places that used to be really, really beautiful, and now they've turned them into basically bum encampments in many sections. Scary, scary stuff going on. I don't want to live around anything like that. I wouldn't imagine anyone else would either. So, if you want freedom, get out in the country. There's still some left. And like old Will Rogers said, buy land. They ain't making no more of it. So guys, I appreciate you tuning in. And let me know what you think down here out of our list. Which one of these states would you prefer to move to if you had to strategically relocate? And one last thing I'll say about this. Please, 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 whatever you do, if you have any liberal inclinations at all, leave them behind when you come to this new red state, because that's the whole idea, is that as the shift happens, the people that are opposed to being in a red state will move over to blue states, and the people that are red, that are living in a blue state, will move over to red states where they should have been living all along. So good luck to you guys. I'm not trying to tell anyone what to do. This is just scratching the surface of some ideas to at least point you in the right direction. So appreciate you tuning in. I stand for liberty. I hope you do too. We'll see you next time.